Welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna be talking all about spring crappie fishing. And we're gonna be hopping in the boat with my buddy Joel Nelson, and he's really gonna go through how he likes to target crappies as they move from their wintering holes all the way up to their spawning areas. Now, with the weird weather that we've been having, you know, depending on where you live, the fish might be anywhere from in those wintering holes all the way up to the shoreline. So we're gonna be breaking down this bite, and we're gonna talk about targeting fish that aren't necessarily all the way up on that shoreline yet. So that's a really good opportunity to intercept some of these fish before they get beat up, you know, when that spawning bite really becomes popular in spring. So that's what we're gonna be talking about today, so stay tuned.
There we go, that's what we're here for. Just some crappies, and I tell you, it's a time of year that's pretty tough for a lot of anglers to fish, myself included. It's kind of a transition period. You know, we're coming out of winter here, and we've got a time of year where the fish on warm days are pushing up shallow. On cold days like this one, even though this is a smaller fish, they're trying to do what it takes to get into the spawning routine, but you know, Mother Nature's having none of it. It's pretty cold out, so we're actually catching these fish between the deep parts of the lake and the shallow parts, between where we catch them ice fishing and between where we hope they're gonna be in the springtime for spawning. There she goes. So, like I said, up here is where we expect them to spawn. That's the shallow stuff. I know in 5-6 feet of water, given water temps that we're looking for, mid 50s, upper 50s, that's what's gonna go down. Right now, it's just not happening. So we're trying to stay vertical on these fish, hover over them in kind of those mid-range depths between 8-12 foot of water.
Now, if the crappies are still set up in that in-between area between their wintering holes and their spawning grounds, one of the biggest keys if you want to catch them is making sure your presentation is dialed in just right. And boat control can be a really big part in getting bit and knocking in bits. So I'm gonna let Joel explain that a little bit more right now.
So with the boat, I'm taking painstaking effort to try and keep my baits vertical. That's really what it's all about when it's cold, when fish are turned off. I'd love to jig troll right now. It probably would work better with some of the scattered fish that we're seeing, but the issue becomes them actually chasing down and overtaking that bait. So right now, boat control is all about working down this break, but doing it so slowly. And at the end of the day, I really need to make sure that what I'm doing is keeping that bait hovering in that fish's face as long as possible. It really is just like ice fishing. So if you get in that ice fishing set of mind with your boat control, keeping your baits vertical, that's really gonna help you catch a lot more fish when it's like this.
Now, shore fishing can be really popular this time of year as the fish start to move up into their spawning areas, which usually happens when water temperatures are kind of in that like mid 50s to high 50s range, depending on weather, of course, recent weather. But this can be a great time of year to fish them from shore as well once they get within casting distance of that shoreline. So now Joel is gonna talk a little bit about some strategies for shore fishing crappies this time of year.
If I was looking for a good place to fish from shore, I'd probably focus on some of the northernmost shorelines that look to have a little bit of character to them. You know, sometimes a dead shoreline with very little, you know, vegetative cover along the edges with very little features can hold fish, but more often than not, there's gonna be something about it. There's gonna be a notch, there's gonna be a bulrush bed, some pencil reeds, definitely. In the southern part of the state where I do a lot of fishing, brush can be king, so a little bit of shoreline brush. You can see some overhanging trees. All of that is just perfect, and you know, it's always going to depend. Plan to put on some miles if you can, or at least a couple 100 yards walking up and down the bank. I think of it a lot like trout fishing in that way. If you're not in a spot that you like, as long as it's public ground, work your way down that shoreline, you know, use your feet like you would a trolling motor on a boat. You know, get down there and see if you can get on some fish in different areas.
So some of you may be thinking, what is the best way to catch crappies this time of year? And unfortunately, there really is no best way. The answer is, it depends. Depends on the situation, it depends on how the crappies are set up. You know, some days you might be casting to the fish and, you know, cast and retrieve kind of deal. Other days, you might want to be vertically jigging above them depending on what depth of water they're in. And also, sometimes You know, if those fish are suspended, you might want to toss a bobber out to them, you know, if they're kind of skittish and you can't get on top of them with the vertical jigging situation. So the short answer is it depends, but I'm gonna let Joel go a little bit more in depth on that topic.
So as a general rule, water temperatures are everything with spring crappie fishing. For me at least, a lot of the lakes I'm looking to fish, I want them to be 50 degrees or above. And consistency is key. I mean, if you've got this yo-yo kind of weather that we've been having lately, it can make it tough. Even if the water temps are in the low 50s, sometimes you can get into these situations where, hey, it's what the prevailing water temperatures have been the past couple days in a gradual warming pattern. So anything above the 50s, I like to get a bit more aggressive. I like to cast. I like to pull if the fish are a little bit deeper. And when it's colder than that, when I'd say it's 52 to 55 and below, a lot of times those fish are pushed off. They're in the transition, or they're even potentially where you were catching them in the winter. That's when I like to fish vertical. That's when I like to be stationary. You know, if they are shallow and driving over them with a boat is gonna spook them, especially in clear water, then a bobber is called for. A lot of times, then I'll rig a slip bobber, you know, 6 feet of water, pitch that slip bobber up there, let that bait dangle. Slip bobbers are great because you can place them wherever you need to be, cover a ton of different water, and really you need to stay versatile, and you need to match the presentation and the speed of that presentation to the water temperatures you have. Over 50 degrees for me, you can be a little bit more aggressive. 50 degrees and under, you really got to kiss up to them. You really got to get vertical. You really got to ice fish for them. And as a final word, when you're talking bait, when we're talking minnows, which seem to be the preferred bait for a lot of crappies this time of year, my general rule of thumb with minnows is when they make your hands cold, you need them. And it's a really simple rule that's held true a lot of times for walleyes, for crappies. If minnows are a pain in the butt, if it aches, every time you got to reach into that minnow bucket, a lot of times they're necessary. So use those tips. You know, spring, it's a fluid time of year, it's dynamic. Water temperatures raise and drop. You need to roll with the punches and you need to be versatile to catch fish.
Now, one of the biggest keys to having success this time of year is being versatile. And now Joel is gonna break down a few different baits that he likes to use this time of year that are extremely versatile and put crappies in the boat in spring.
So I'm looking for a couple different styles of baits when I'm fishing during this period, because as fish are in transition, you need to be too. You need to be fishing different ways. You need to be able to fish a bait vertically. You need to be able to pull it, sometimes trolling, and other times you need to cast it with a slow retrieve. And the baits that I have right here, 3 of these favorites, they cover so many different aspects of versatility. You know, this is the Mimic Minnow, and the Mimic Minnow series is just amazing. There's so many different options and baits and colors and weights and sizes that you can really dial in for just about any kind of crappie bite on any lake. And the one I have right here has been nice because we've been able to vertical jig it, but I can also pull it. It does go behind the boat pretty well, tracks nice, straight and true, and really is a winner. And I like fishing all of these kinds of baits on, you know, 6.5 foot to 7 foot rods. I like this one. It's got a light power, extra fast action. I really think that makes a difference. The crappies can kind of feel, they can hit that bait. You feel it. They're not gonna feel it getting pulled out of their face. So you can set a good hook to them. And another one I really like is this Impulse Bloodworm. It's just a pre-rig. You get this. It's got a jig head or 2 along with a couple extra tails, and it's again a very finesse presentation. If I need to fish vertical and I need to just hover over those fish and really kiss up to them to get them to eat, that's what I will do with these. And I tell you, the Impulse Bloodworm, especially in traditional colors like white, red, black is a great sleeper color for a lot of the stuff we're doing here. It's just a prime time spring bait. And probably the last of mine that's a favorite for spring transition crappies is this Firefly jig, and a little bit of hair can go a long way. You see, I just have a tiny chunk of plastic here to add a little bit of bulk, just make it a touch more enticing. But the Firefly jig itself just offers so much life, and that's true whether it's under a bobber, whether it's cast out, or in this case, you see I've got a little bit of split shot here. You know, we were using the split shot earlier to get down over a deeper brush pile, and I'd say that for all the baits that we're working right now. If you're fishing in deeper water, you're trying to stay vertical especially, or if you've got a bobber rig in slightly deeper water, that split shot can really help get you to the depths that you need to be, straighten out that pencil bobber, make things work the way they should. And I tell you, any of those 3 baits, when crappies are a little bit turned off in the spring, are some of my favorites to turn to really get them to bite.
Well, hopefully this video was yet another reminder that there's more to spring crappie fishing than beating the bank with a bobber rig. So if you learned something in this video, make sure to hit that little red subscribe button down below and stay tuned because we have more awesome videos coming this spring.